You know, we were very kind of established in this console model and the PC, and then we got mobile, and then we started getting things like the iPhone, and then these kind of interesting peripherals for music. The towels about to come out, the iPad, and now social gaming platforms. So all these platforms are kind of exploding before our eyes very rapidly. But I think it's important to remember, these are just technology platforms, and the platforms that we work on, you know, as designers, are actually a lot more elaborate than that. In fact, I think that there are really about 3 major platforms that we're working on. Only one of them is technology, another one is culture, and the third one is psychology. And when you think about somebody enjoying an entertainment experience, you know, whether it's a game or something else, it has to run effectively on all 3 of these platforms. You know, and this has been true for a very, very long time. And these platforms actually influence each other quite a bit. I think the technologies that we have available to us have a direct impact on the type of cultures that we end up building. You know, if we have spears and pots and all this, we form hunter-gatherer cultures. And that leads to certain types of psychologies for the way we think about the world, the models we build of the world that we live in. So we have this, you know, array of hard technology, but then we have an array of cultures. You know, in the game industry for the longest time, it's basically, we think in terms of, there's the Asian culture, European, American. And I realize, you know, games are a worldwide business, but just in terms of the way historically we've thought about it, it's these 3 cultures. Psychologically, you know, a lot of it's demographics. You know, we have certain games that are kind of targeted to kids and what kids, you know, how they see the world. Then we have, you know, older people, which traditionally have not played games. Then we have, you know, females and males. These are all different psychology platforms. Now you can imagine, basically, if you wanted to target very specifically, you know, you might say, okay, we're going to aim a game at, you know, young girls that live in Germany, that have a PC. Okay, now that's a very, very specific target. So we're really looking at the overlap of these 3 things. But you can actually target, you know, even a very small platform like that very deeply. If you, in fact, wanted to target this platform, you would make this, which is the I Wish I Had a Horse game. And so is this, and this, and this, and this. In fact, if you go to a German software store, you will see that about a quarter of the software is this. So this is actually a very deep platform. I mean, you think there are a lot of Sims expansion packs. You should see this stuff. But now there's another approach to targeting these platforms, which is that, you know, how do we capture, you know, as much as we can? How do we capture every demographic, every culture, you know, every platform? And that's possible. I mean, it happens occasionally. It takes a lot of work and effort. You have to kind of think about it differently. Part of it, like on the technology side, you know, you want something that can actually replicate your experience, you know, to some degree. You know, so it actually, you know, you recognize the fact that, you know, the interactive experience is somehow related to the linear experience. You know, if you were going to buy Avatar, the video game, and this is what you were buying, I don't think you would, you know, hit the target quite as deeply. You know, this is what you'd expect from this. Now, there's also, you know, in America we've had this kind of American-centric view of culture because we're very used to the idea that American culture is easily exported. And the world wants to, you know, basically take our culture anywhere. And this is, you know, what's kind of known as cultural imperialism. And there's been some pushback in that kind of cultural protectionism, you know, certain, you know, like France having a certain quota for French-made films, etc., which has not really been very effective at all. But what actually is turning the tide is we're starting to see other places in the world starting to export their culture. So I think, you know, America's, you know, preeminence as the cultural exporter is kind of drawing to a close. I first noticed that on the West Coast because there's a very strong interest in Japanese culture, starting with things like games and anime. But now, you know, just a lot of the really interesting, edgy culture over time is becoming more and more from Japan. So I think culturally we're going to see a lot more cross-pollination, you know, going into the future than we've seen up to now. I think also it's interesting how much something can really grab different cultures. And, you know, this can be true of interactive or storytelling, but Avatar was interesting because everybody decided this movie was about them. It was surprising how the themes within Avatar, which is, you know, in some ways a retelling of Fern Gully or something like that, but everybody decided, oh yes, it's about us. And, you know, that's something where you're basically dealing with a cultural platform in a very platform-independent way. Can you find the kind of core stories, the abstractions of things that people all around the world will kind of relate to and understand? Now, on the psychology side, we're kind of used to the idea that kids play games, and that's changing very dramatically. We're just starting to see a lot of parents play games with their kids. A lot of people that grew up with games, now playing them into their 30s, and then playing games with their kids, Really, it's a giant shift that's happening right now. And that's even jumping up to older age people that didn't play games at all as a kid. And so I think for the first time, we used to have this chicken and egg problem where there were very few themes in games that were broad in terms of our cultural demographic. They were not as broad as, if you went into a bookstore and looked at all the different kind of subjects that you could read books about, or even watch movies or watch TV. The thematic diversity within these art forms was very broad. There was something to appeal to almost anybody, male or female, young or old. And I think just now I'm seeing that in games. The games are just exploding again in this way where we can hit these psychological platforms far more effectively. So I feel like that chicken and egg thing is starting to be broken, which really is kind of bringing value of play out to a wider and wider group of people. And games are something that we play, but they're really there's a connection between play and games that's interesting to me. The toys, you can play with a ball, they bounce around, they start learning physics. It can be a very playful, joyous experience, no rules, but it is a learning experience. You can then actually wrap some rules around that ball and call it a game, and put structure over it, and start strategizing over it, making team sports, etc. People who start playing games, sports especially, then start learning kind of social dynamics. There are these social things that are wrapped around games. So all these levels are things that are kind of moving out, It used to be, very kind of physical, like kids playing sports is very natural. Video games was the new kid on the block. But now, I think that people are starting to realize that they're all the same, and the games and play have this very symbiotic relationship. In some sense, I think of play as the thing that helps us build models of the world. From a very early age, when a kid is like 2 or 3 years old, they're playing instinctively and building models of the world around them. Games are later a way to test models, that you can actually compare the efficiency of your model, the structure of your model, to somebody else's in a game, in a strategic environment, or even more of a tactical kind of physical environment. You can just as well replace games with imagination here. But I think that's fundamentally the reason why evolutionarily we enjoy play and games. This is a scientist named Scott Diddams. He works at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. He's studying quantum optical interactions, and he's doing that to build a more elaborate physics model of the world. This is Timmy. He's a toddler, 3 years old, in Carolina Day School. Now, he's currently studying properties of magnetic interaction. But he's building a comprehensive world model while he's doing this. Now, between these two models, they're both doing the same thing. They're both, building models of the world. Guess whose model is going to be more comprehensive, complex, and robust? Kids know how to do this. That's what kids do. When kids play, that's exactly what they're doing. It's basically the scientific method. And I think that our larger culture is starting to realize this and see it effectively, which is one of the reasons why they want to apply games to everything under the sun, because they understand how powerful this actually is.